Now on to some revenue sharing talk and, you know, planning for the future for Oklahoma football. So you've got revenue sharing for college athletes on the horizon, and OU is trying to stay ahead of the curve like they always are under Joe Castiglione and Joe Harris's leadership. And they have partnered with former Philadelphia Eagles executive Jake Rosenberg and his consulting firm, which is called the Athlete Group. That this is it's really interesting. And remember, with the House versus NCAA settlement, it was determined that schools that opt in can share, what was it, roughly 20 to $22 million per year with their athletes. So that's where Rosenberg comes in. He's going to help, along with Curtis Lofton in his new role as general manager. He's going to help determine the best way to distribute this money. And people are going to use the term salary cap. It's technically not a salary cap because they're still not employees, but it is, however you want to describe it, there's going to be a pool of money. And Rosenberg, along with Curtis Lofton and several other people, are going to determine the best way to distribute that money. And I feel like OU diving into this now, trying to get out in front of it, and just trying to have a framework in place for when this switch does get flipped, when we do enter the revenue sharing era of college athletics, especially college football, that OU is just going to be ready to go. And I think it's a really, really smart move by Joe Castiglione and the athletic department, and of course, football. So I think it makes all the sense in the world, man.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. I think it's smart. I think, I'm curious to know how much can they do right now, or how much of this is actually like concrete and not the rules are going to change every 4 to 6 months, kind of like it feels like they have over the last 4 or 5 years. Um, I don't know, but I'm glad that they are at least getting out there in front of it and probably developing the model that they want to at least implement to start off and maybe see how that goes. But you're not just going to be winging it. They're going to be set up and ready to handle it. And I don't. So is the 20 to 22 million? You can. It's not like a set distribution. You can distribute that to your players however you see fit. Is that how that
I
works?
that is that's where it gets interesting. Like, what are the Title IX implications of all that stuff? That's where it feels like there's still some uncertainty to there. I haven't really seen much of an update on it, or at least I haven't sought one out. I feel like we would know if it was going to have to be split equally between men's athletics and women's athletics. I don't know. It makes sense if you just sit down and you think logically. Football is the sport that makes money.
Yeah.
It would make sense that a large portion of that pool of money would go to football players. But I haven't seen anyone come out and say, hey, this is the amount of money we're going to be able to give to our football players. Maybe it's
Right.
happened. Have you seen that? Because I haven't.
No. And I'll just tell you the way I view it, and this may be totally wrong, but it's just kind of how I view it. It's if it's a revenue share, you don't get to share revenue unless you're helping fill the bucket. And I most schools, football is the only revenue producing sport that they have. It pays for everything else. So, I mean, the first thought is, well, we should get some of that too. You are getting some of that by your sport existing on campus. Football is already paying for your coaches, your facilities, your travel, all of that. It's all paid for by football at most places. Not to say that there's some basketball programs that produce revenue that are in the black. There's some baseball and soft, like, I don't know the exact breakdown, but most of the places football pays for everything. That's why I would think that only the football players would be in on the revenue share. But right, that's, I don't know. That's just probably a very elementary way of viewing it, but that's how I see it.
This is from last week, and I remember seeing this. An official for the U.S. Department of Education said that Title IX rules will apply to future revenue dollars that schools share with college athletes, but the department declined to offer guidance on how schools should distribute the money between men and women to comply with the broad language of the law.
I
So
don't, I,
Title IX is going to have to apply, but they don't tell you how to do it.
well, government at work, but Title IX doesn't have anything to do with revenue distribution. Nothing to do with it.
Equal athletic opportunities, I believe, is the phrase in the law.
Yeah, there's equal opportunity to athletics, and again, that's what football is providing for most schools. There's no, I can't imagine that there would be any court ruling ever that would say that someone from a non-revenue producing sport gets a share of the revenue producing sport. I don't even know where you would draw the connection between the two. It's weird to me that Title IX is even mentioned there, but I understand why people throw it out there, and it's a roadblock to a lot of things, but it just seems so strange that it would apply to this scenario. I don't know.
If you just use common sense, the revenue share should go to the sports that are making revenue. I don't think would any reasonable person argue with that. The answer may be
No.
yes, but
Well, I don't think so. I will say this though. Um, let, not a school specific or a sport specific, but let's start by saying football is the revenue producer, and the football program pays for the softball program. Now there may be a change to the way that is distributed. Like they may have to carve out some of their budget to go, and they have to divide that with their players. Does that make sense? Like you allocate a big chunk over here for you know, the women's track team, operating budget, coaching salaries, travel expenses, all of that, and then they have to carve out from that piece of the pie review distribution with their players. I mean, I guess I could understand that, but I don't know.
this is the beauty of it. No one knows.
I don't think anyone
No
knows.
one knows how this is going to work. But when you look at what OU's doing, I'm told that Rosenberg will be handling football first and then is going to help when more details of the revenue share model are determined. He's going to help with the other sports. I also was told that his role will be to assist in building a sustainable system around OU strategy when it comes to identifying players, evaluating those players, recruiting those players, and then retaining those players. So they're still working out what the balance between him and Curtis and some of the other members of the staff is going to be, but they'll get those details ironed out, and it is something that we've now heard Brent Venables talk about publicly, but it's something that he is completely on board with.
Yeah.
And Curtis Lofton and Jake Rosenberg are going to work closely together. And their task is to develop a system that works best for OU.
Mm-hmm.
And what works best for OU may not work best at Georgia or at Clemson, but their task is to develop a system, a structure that is ready to roll when revenue sharing becomes a thing that is best for the University of Oklahoma. And
Yeah,
I'm
and
damn glad Curtis Lofton is involved because I know that
I
that
am
guy will get
too.
it right.
I am too. You know, here's the thing. Like, I'm thrilled that OU is out in front on this, but I also hope that everyone else is doing this too.
Yeah.
And the reason is, like, if you want to model a way to find the value for players, how to recruit them, how to pay them what they deserve or what they've earned, and be able to retain all those players. It can't be the Wild West everywhere else where people are just throwing stupid money at all kinds of different guys on rosters. You want everyone to kind of be modeled the same to where the values on the players are fairly, like, across different teams and across conferences. The value is reasonable to where, I mean, otherwise you can still have people making outlandish offers to your guys, and you're losing guys to mistakes, frankly, being made by other teams, I guess is what I'm saying.
You basically want to create a reasonable market
Yes.
with the other teams,
Yes.
whether that's the other teams in the SEC or the other teams in the SEC and the Big Ten. Now is there the Power Two or whatever you want to call what the Power Four. But I don't think anyone wants to be out there making stupid decisions. And that's why I do think that a lot of these people are going to not work together, but discuss how they're operating. And I think that already happens at the collective level.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to think about. Like, here's what the NFL doesn't deal with. Like, if we're talking about a market here, there's like a natural arbitrage that is created because, like, say you're buying, like, whatever commodity, you can buy it in the United States and you can sell it somewhere else for a different price, and you can kind of keep that difference there in between. What's interesting about college football is there's kind of that situation where a player, how much is a player worth in the SEC? How much is that same player worth in the Big 12? How much is that same player worth in, a non-power five or something like that? And because, like, it's like a different level of football. So I wonder how that market is going to translate and correlate. It's there's a lot of moving parts, to say the least.
Do you want to go down the road of what the role of collectives is going to be now and how they're going to sweeten all these deals?
It's going to be the cherry on top. I mean, that's the thing is I feel like a lot of people said, okay, NIL's done. We can all kind of have a uniform salary cap. No, it's just going to all be on top of it again.
Basically, just going to turn into a marketing arm where you can say, hey, we can bring you X, Y, and Z deals. You're still going to get your rev share.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to get really, really complicated. I mean, college football has been big business for a long time, but that's why I think I mean, they are putting a professional structure in place. That's what this is.
Yeah. It's wild though to think about. And I don't know, someone that's been at a university for a long time and has dealt with donations would know. I How much has been diverted from your typical donation route to NIL, and is the hunger going to stay there for a lot of schools to continue to throw a ton of money towards NIL if you don't see any, like, added results from it? I mean, you can only go to people for so long and say, hey, if we get this guy, here's what we need. We get this guy, this is a game changer. And I mean, Ole Miss is a great example. I've said this about Kiffin. Did he create a monster for no reason by asking for all that money? Because now they've thrown 20, $30 million at a bunch of free agent players. If the results are the same, will you ever be able to get that money again? I don't know.
I don't know, but We're most concerned about OU football. And man, I feel really good about this initial plan.
I do too.
And you look at Rosenberg's experience as an NFL executive, you combine that with Curtis Lofton's experience as a stud in college, a big time NFL player. You combine that, and I just feel like when those guys sit down with players, whether it's a recruit, a current player, or someone you're going after in the portal, like I have to imagine players are going to value that combination's opinion. Like if a recruit or whoever comes in and says, my agent says I'm worth X, and a guy that was with the Eagles front office for over 12 years and a guy that was a stud linebacker in the NFL say, no, 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 you're worth Y. They may not be happy about it, but you have to their opinion, I feel like it's going to carry weight
Yeah.
because
Well,
of their
and it's good.
credentials, man.
Yes, the credentials, and my guess is when you go in and say I should be getting X, I that's probably all the ammunition you're going to be taking in there, and they're going to be sitting down with, well, here are the players that make X currently. Here's the production from those players. Here, like, they're going to be prepared, I guess, and their homework's going to be done, and they're going to have a very well laid out reason to why you're getting what you're going to get or what they think you should get, and then you negotiate from there.
I think that Joe Castiglione and Brent Venables deserve a lot of credit. There's a lot in front of Oklahoma right now as we head into this season. Reminder, picked eighth. So there's a lot going on. And I do think Venables deserves a lot of credit. You know, he's focused on this season. But as far as I know, OU's the first program to do something like this. Or at least as far as I know, the first one who it's been reported on.
Yeah.
Maybe I missed someone else doing it, but I haven't seen anything. But I feel like it shows that Venables, while he's really focused on now and on the 2024 season, he knows that he's got to have a plan. He's got to be prepared, that the program has to be prepared for this system that is constantly changing and evolving. I just think it reflects positively on his leadership to me.
Well, yeah, I agree, and I think we take it for granted sometimes. Right, when if you really just sit down and think about what Brent Venables has had on his plate, he came in as head coach at um, one of the best programs of all time that has a very high standard. Uh, Whenever a coach left, um, you've got a conference change upcoming. You've got the whole groundwork, the whole foundation of college football has been changing the entire time. Like, this is not the old school job of show up, recruit like crazy, coach football, and hopefully go win a championship. Like, you while you're doing all of that, you're switching conferences and you're taking the football program into a whole new era, uncharted territory of how to pay and retain players, the transfer portal. It's there's a lot going on right now.
I feel like the guy just wants to coach some defense.
I know.
He's having to
I
deal
know.
with all this. I
The
mean,
good old days.
being a head coach in college football right now, I know they get paid a ton of money, but I feel like it's never been more complicated.
No, never. It's never been close to as complicated.